"We can't have him living here anymore," my stepdad said after manipulating everyone. I was unstable. I left that night. A week later, they received eviction papers. I'm 19 years old, trying to figure things out like most people my age. The difference is, I've been the responsible one since I was just a kid. When my dad died, I was only 7. I didn't get the luxury of being just a child anymore. Mom, Sally is her name, she was all I had. For years, it was just the two of us against the world. We had this rhythm, you know? We weren't perfect, but we were a team. I still remember how she'd ruffle my hair and call me her little man, which I pretended to hate but secretly loved. Those memories feel like they belong to someone else's life now. Everything changed when Tom came into the picture. At first, Tom seemed all right. He was smooth, charming, and nice to me when I first met him. But after a while, I realized he wasn't who he pretended to be. He was manipulative, selfish, and I could see right through it. But my mom, she was all in. She convinced herself that she had to hold on to him because he was the only one who'd love her. The more time passed, the more I saw her ignore the things he did to control us. He was a master at triangulation. When I wasn't around, he'd apparently tell Mom how concerned he was about my attitude problem or how I seemed withdrawn. Then when Mom would bring these concerns up to me, I'd be completely blindsided. "What attitude problem?" I'd ask, genuinely confused. "I've barely even spoken to Tom this week." But the seed of doubt had already been planted in her mind. As time went on, Tom's tactics became more obvious to me, though still invisible to everyone else. He'd volunteer to pick me up from school, then conveniently forget until I'd been waiting for an hour. When I'd finally get home, frustrated and tired, he'd be there with Mom, explaining how I must have mixed up the times. "Chris has been so forgetful lately," he'd say with that concerned look. "Maybe we should get him checked for ADHD?" And Mom would look at me with this mixture of worry and disappointment that made my stomach knot up. The worst part was watching how he manipulated my mom. Sally had always been strong in her own quiet way. After Dad died, she held everything together even when she was falling apart inside. But Tom knew exactly how to target her insecurities. He'd praise her for the smallest things. "You're such an amazing cook, Sally. I've never met a woman who could make hamburger helper taste gourmet," making her dependent on his approval. Then he'd withdraw that praise randomly, leaving her scrambling to figure out what she'd done wrong. "You know I love you, Sally," he'd say when she questioned him about anything, "but sometimes you're just too sensitive. That's not what I meant at all." Classic gaslighting. I'd seen it enough times to recognize it, but Mom was too deep in his web to see what was happening. Then came Lindsay, Tom's daughter from a previous relationship. She moved in with us about a year after Tom and Mom got married. At 16, she was everything I wasn't: loud, demanding, and completely entitled. She'd throw tantrums over the slightest inconvenience, yet Tom would treat her like she was a delicate princess who needed protecting. The way Tom turned everyone against me was methodical. He started with my mom, then Lindsay, then extended family and neighbors. He'd tell slightly different versions of stories to different people, creating this patchwork narrative where I was increasingly painted as troubled and ungrateful. To our neighbor, I was a troublemaker who stayed out too late. To my mom's sister, I was going through a phase and giving my poor mother grief. By the time I was 18, I felt like I was living in some twisted alternate reality. The story everyone believed about me had nothing to do with who I actually was. I was still taking honors classes, working part-time at the local grocery store, and had never even gotten a detention. But somehow, in Tom's narrative, I was this disruptive, potentially dangerous presence in the house. The breaking point came on a Thursday night. We were having dinner, one of Tom's mandatory family dinners, where he'd interrogate me about my day while barely letting me get a word in. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Then Lindsay, with this calculated little smirk, dropped her bomb. "Dad," she said sweetly, "Chris made me feel really uncomfortable earlier." I nearly choked on my water. Earlier that day, Lindsay had cornered me in the kitchen when everyone else was out. She'd pressed herself against me, whispering something about how we're not really related, and how it wouldn't be that weird if something happened between us. It was disgusting and creepy. I'd pushed her away, not roughly, just enough to create space, and told her firmly to back off. She'd stormed away, slamming doors like she always did when she didn't get her way. But now, sitting at dinner, she was twisting it completely. The way she told it, I'd been the one making inappropriate suggestions. I was trapped in her lie, and from the look in Tom's eyes, I knew he'd been waiting for something exactly like this. "Listen," Tom said, turning to my mom with practiced concern. "He's 18 now, he's a burden, we can't have him living here anymore." "I don't know," Mom said, her voice weak. "Maybe it's time." Those words hit me like a physical blow. My own mother, the woman I'd helped through her darkest days after Dad died, was actually considering throwing me out based on a blatant lie. She wouldn't even look me in the eye. I stood up, my legs shaking. "Seriously, you're really just gonna let him do this?" I asked her. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. She had made her choice, and it wasn't me. That night, I packed my things, just 2 suitcases of clothes, my laptop, and the few remaining photos I had of Dad that Tom hadn't managed to lose. I didn't have a plan, just the desperate need to get out of that toxic environment before I completely lost myself in Tom's twisted reality. I called Uncle Jack, my dad's brother. We weren't super close. Tom had made sure of that by telling Mom that Jack was a bad influence who enabled my attitude problems, but he was the only person I could think of who might understand. He picked me up without hesitation, not even asking for details until we were safely at his apartment. But even after I'd physically escaped, Tom's manipulation continued. Within days, he was spreading stories throughout the neighborhood. To some, he claimed I'd stolen money from them. To others, he hinted that I had violent tendencies. He even contacted my workplace, expressing concerns to my manager about my reliability, nearly costing me my job. It was like he couldn't stand the idea that I'd escaped his control, so he was determined to destroy whatever independent life I might build. He contacted distant relatives, old family friends, even my high school counselor, spinning different versions of the same lie, that I was troubled, potentially dangerous, and had abandoned my poor mother who had done everything for me. Some people believed him without question. My neighbor, who used to give me cookies when I was little, now crossed the street to avoid me. My friend's parents suddenly didn't want him hanging out with me. Even my mom's parents, my own grandparents, sent me a stiffly worded email about respecting my mother and giving Tom a chance. Update 1. There were days when I didn't know who I was anymore. Was I really the problem? Was I truly this violent, ungrateful, selfish kid that he'd convinced everyone I was? No matter how many times I told myself it wasn't true, his words still found their way inside my head, taking root like some invasive weed that refused to die. Then came the phone call that changed everything. I was at work, stacking produce in the organic section of the grocery store, when my phone vibrated in my pocket. Uncle Jack rarely called during my shifts, so I knew something was up. I quickly stepped into the back room to answer. "Chris, you need to come home as soon as your shift ends," he said, his voice unusually tense. "There's something you need to see." I spent the rest of my shift distracted, nearly knocking over a display of cantaloupes as my mind raced through possibilities. Had something happened to Mom? Had Tom escalated his smear campaign against me? By the time I pulled into Uncle Jack's driveway, my stomach was in knots. Jack was waiting for me at the kitchen table, an old leather folder spread open in front of him. He looked up when I walked in, and there was something in his expression I couldn't quite read, a mixture of anger, disbelief, and what almost looked like triumph. "Sit down, kid," he said, pushing the folder toward me. "I've been cleaning out some of my old files, and I found something that should have been given to you a long time ago." I sat, pulling the worn folder closer. Inside was a stack of legal documents, the kind with official seals and signatures at the bottom. The paper felt heavy in my hands as I started to read, the legal jargon swimming before my eyes until I caught a familiar address, our home address, followed by my name. "What is this?" I asked, though part of me already knew, a slow realization dawning as I scanned the document. "Your father's will," Jack said, his voice softer now. "Your dad left the house to you, Chris, not to Sally, not to be shared to you directly. He set it up in a trust that you'd gain control of when you turned 18. I was supposed to be the executor, but after your dad died." He trailed off, running a hand over his face. "Sally was so broken, I couldn't bring myself to push the issue then, and as time passed, I assumed she knew, that she was holding it for you until you were of age." I stared at the document, my father's signature at the bottom, suddenly the only thing in focus. "The house that my mom and Tom are living in. It's mine all this time." Jack nodded grimly. "Legally, yes. Since your 18th birthday 4 months ago, that house has belonged to you. Not Tom, not your mom, you." I felt lightheaded, like I might pass out or throw up or both. I wasn't just some kid being pushed out of their home. I was the rightful owner being manipulated and forced out of my own property. All those renovations Tom had made, all the ways he'd erased my dad's presence, he'd been doing to a house that wasn't even his. "Does Mom know?" I finally managed to ask, though I think I already knew the answer. Jack's expression darkened. "She has to. Her name is on these documents, too. She signed as a witness. And I mentioned it to her once years ago before Tom came into the picture. She brushed it off, said we'd figure it out when the time came." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing Tom strutting around my father's house, my house, acting like he owned the place, throwing away my dad's things, cutting down our tree, making my mother believe I was the intruder when all along he was the one who didn't belong. By morning, a strange calm had replaced my anger. For months, I'd felt powerless watching Tom systematically dismantle my life. But now I had leverage, I had the truth, and I had the law on my side. I spoke with Jack over breakfast, laying out what I wanted to do. He listened without interrupting, then nodded slowly when I finished. "It won't be easy," he warned. "Tom won't go quietly, and your mom—" "This could be the final break between you two. Are you prepared for that?" Was I? I thought about all the times Mom had stood by silently while Tom belittled me, all the times she'd chosen his version of events over mine. The way she'd hesitated at the dinner table when Lindsay lied about me, like she was actually considering whether her own son was some kind of predator. How she'd let Tom erase every trace of my father from our home without protest. "Yes," I said finally. "I'm prepared." That afternoon, I met with a lawyer Jack recommended. He reviewed the documents, his expression growing increasingly grim as he flipped through the pages. "This is straightforward," he said when he finished. "The house is yours, no question. Your mother has been living there essentially as a tenant since you turned 18, though I'm sure she didn't see it that way. We can file for eviction immediately." "And Tom?" I asked. He smiled, though there was no humor in it. "Your stepdad has no legal standing whatsoever. He's not on the deed, not on the will, not on anything. Legally speaking, he's a guest who's overstayed his welcome." We spent the next hour going over my options. I could demand immediate eviction, giving them the minimum legal notice required, just 3 days in our state. I could offer a longer timeline as a courtesy. I could even negotiate some kind of rental agreement if I wanted to maintain ownership, but allow them to stay. That night, I sent my mom a text. It was simple, direct. "You have 1 week to leave the house. I know the truth about Dad's will." My heart pounded so hard as I hit send that I could feel it in my fingertips. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew it couldn't be worse than what I had already lived through. Update 2. I waited for the explosion. It came almost immediately, first a call that I let go to voicemail, then a barrage of texts from Mom that oscillated between confusion, denial, and guilt-tripping. "What are you talking about?" the first one read. "This isn't funny, Chris. Please call me back. We need to talk about this. You can't just throw your family out on the street. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me." I didn't respond to any of them. I couldn't. I knew if I heard her voice, if I engaged in any kind of back and forth, I might weaken, might start to doubt myself again. So I silenced my phone and tried to focus on my homework, though the words on the page seemed to blur together. Then came a text from an unknown number, Tom. "You ungrateful little shit. Your mother is in tears. Is that what you wanted? To hurt her more than you already have?" That one I almost responded to, my thumbs hovering over the keyboard as I composed and deleted a dozen different replies. In the end, I just blocked the number. This wasn't about hurting Mom. It was about reclaiming what was mine, what Dad had intended for me to have. The next morning, as I was leaving for class, I found Lindsay waiting by my car. She looked smaller somehow, less confident without Tom and Mom backing her up. "You can't do this," she said, her voice lacking its usual edge. "Where are we supposed to go?" I felt a twinge of guilt. Lindsay, for all her faults, was still just a kid caught in the middle of adult problems. But then I remembered how she'd lied about me, how she'd been a willing participant in Tom's campaign to drive me out. "That's not my problem," I said, moving past her to unlock my car. "You have a week. I suggest you start packing." She followed me, grabbing my arm. "What if I told everyone the truth, that I lied that night at dinner? Would you let us stay then?" I stared at her, momentarily stunned by the admission. Part of me wanted to say yes, to use this as leverage to clear my name. But another part knew it wouldn't change anything. Tom would just find another way to twist the narrative to make me the villain. "It's too late for that," I said finally, gently removing her hand from my arm. "The house is mine. It always was. That's the only truth that matters now." As I drove away, I caught sight of her in my rearview mirror, standing alone in the street. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the look on her face that night at dinner, the calculated malice in her eyes as she told her lie, and any sympathy I might have felt evaporated. A week passed by both excruciatingly slowly and in a blur. I immersed myself in work and school, trying not to think about what was happening at the house, my house. I'd given the eviction notice to my lawyer, who served it officially. Mom had called Jack hysterical, but he'd stood firm, telling her that this was between her and me. The day of the eviction, I couldn't concentrate on anything. I kept checking my phone, half expecting another barrage of texts from Mom. But there was nothing. The silence was almost worse than the anger had been. It was my lawyer who called me later that afternoon. "They're gone," he said simply. "The locksmith is changing the locks now. Do you want to come see the property?" The property, my home, reduced to a legal term. I drove there in a daze, not sure what I'd find. Would they have trashed the place out of spite? Would Mom have taken everything, leaving me with an empty shell? As I pulled into the driveway, I was struck by how ordinary the house looked from the outside. The same faded blue paint, the same slightly overgrown hedges. If I squinted, I could almost pretend it was still the house from my childhood, before Tom, before everything fell apart. Michael met me at the front door, handing me a set of keys. "All yours," he said. "They took their personal belongings but left the furniture, standard in these situations." I nodded numbly, taking the keys. They felt heavy in my palm, the weight of victory and loss combined. The emotional aftermath was brutal. Even though I had reclaimed my house, even though I had forced Tom out, it didn't feel like a victory. My mother's letter haunted me. I kept taking it out, reading it, wondering if there was any way back from this precipice we'd found ourselves on. Could I forgive her? Should I? I still couldn't get my mom to see that I wasn't the villain in this story. She might recognize her own failures now, might even acknowledge Tom's manipulation, but part of her still believed his lies about me. That I was selfish, ungrateful, the son who had thrown his own mother out onto the street. It hurt more than I thought it would. In my darkest moments, I'd catch myself thinking, maybe if I had done something different. But then I'd remember the truth. This wasn't my fault. This was about Tom manipulating her, turning her against me, and me finally standing up for myself, reclaiming what was mine, what my father had wanted me to have. I spent the next few weeks slowly making the house mine again. I repainted my bedroom, hung up posters, bought new furniture that reflected my taste, not Tom's. I even planted a new maple tree in the backyard, in the same spot where the one my dad and I had planted once stood. As for Tom, he didn't go quietly. He tried to contest the eviction, claiming he'd made improvements to the property that increased its value. His lawyer sent threatening letters, demanding compensation. Michael handled it all with calm efficiency, dismissing each claim as the desperate grasping it was. "He has no legal ground to stand on," my lawyer assured me. "He knew he had no right to that property. The fact that he's fighting it just shows how entitled he feels to what isn't his." Eventually, the threats subsided. Tom and Lindsay moved to another state. I heard from a former classmate that he'd found a new job, a new start. Part of me wondered if he'd find another single mother to manipulate, another family to destroy. But that wasn't my problem anymore. As for Mom, we're not back to where we were. I'm not sure we ever will be. But she calls sometimes, and I've started answering. We talk about neutral topics: the weather, my classes, her new job at a different hospital. We carefully avoid discussing Tom or the house or the painful past. It's a fragile truce, but it's something. I don't know what the future holds. Some days the house still feels too empty, too full of ghosts. Other days I feel a quiet pride in having reclaimed what's mine, in having stood up to the man who tried to erase me from my own life. What I do know is this: I'm not the person Tom tried to make me believe I was. I'm stronger than I thought, more resilient than I gave myself credit for. And maybe, just maybe, my dad knew that all along. Maybe that's why he left me the house, not just as a place to live, but as a reminder that I have the right to stand my ground, to fight for what's mine, to build a life that's truly my own.
I was kicked out for my sister's false accusation. Now, they want to be included in my wedding, but it's too late. I'm 26, male. Growing up, we seemed like any other family. Dad worked at the local manufacturing plant. Mom ran her catering business, and my sister, Monica, and I were practically inseparable. I spent my weekends either gaming or helping around the house, normal teenage stuff. At least, that's what I thought until that night 6 years ago. It started at a friend's house party. People were having fun, music was playing, everything seemed fine. Until the next morning, when several expensive items turned up missing: phones, tablets, electronics. That's when Monica decided to pin it all on me. I remember that morning like it was yesterday. Monica burst into the kitchen where our parents were having coffee, tears streaming down her face. I saw him. She screamed, pointing at me. I saw him sneaking out of the room with stuff that wasn't his. I froze, coffee mug halfway to my lips. What are you talking about? Don't lie. She was really putting on a show now. I caught you red-handed going through people's things. Dad's face darkened as he turned to me. Is this true? Of course not. I didn't take anything. I was with Jake and Chris most of the night. They can vouch. Are you calling your sister a liar? Dad barked, cutting me off. Mom just sat there, shaking her head with that look of utter disappointment I'll never forget. I would never steal anything, I insisted. Monica, why are you doing this? But she just kept going, spinning this elaborate tale about catching me rummaging through coats and bags. The more I denied it, the more detailed her story became. Either admit what you did and return everything, Dad growled, or get out. I stood my ground. I'm not admitting to something I didn't do. Dad's face turned scarlet. Pack your things and go. If you can't own up to what you did, you're no son of mine. Monica stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me pack with this blank expression I'll never forget. Not a hint of remorse as she watched our parents throw me out. The next few months were hell. I couch surfed between friends' places, trying to piece my life back together while half the town whispered about me being a thief. My parents told everyone they had no choice but to cut me off for the sake of family integrity. Meanwhile, Monica played the victim, soaking up sympathy for having such a troubled brother. Eventually, I scraped together enough from odd jobs to rent a tiny studio apartment in the next town over. It wasn't much, but it was mine, a place where no one looked at me like I was criminal. Slowly, I rebuilt my life, got a stable job, made new friends who didn't know my past. The occasional text would come from relatives. Just apologize and come home, my aunt would write. Your parents miss you, an uncle would claim, but I refused to apologize for something I never did. That was 6 years ago. Since then, I've made a good life for myself. Found someone I love, moved forward. Or so I thought, until my wedding plans stirred up all the old ghosts. You have to invite them, my cousin messaged after seeing our engagement announcement. Your father says he's hurt you didn't even tell them. I showed the message to my fiancée, who squeezed my hand. If they want to make amends, she said gently, shouldn't they start with an apology? But apologies weren't their style. Instead, my mother sent a message through my aunt. We deserve an invitation. He needs to stop acting like a victim. The nerve of it made my blood boil. Then came Monica's voicemail, dripping with fake sweetness. Hey, long time no talk. Heard you're getting married. Let me know if you need family there. As if she hadn't destroyed my life with her lies. Things came to a head when they showed up unannounced at my apartment one Saturday afternoon. My fiancé and I were working on seating charts when they barged in. Let's cut the nonsense, Dad announced, barging past me. We're your family. We have a right to be at your wedding. A right? I couldn't help but laugh. Like I had a right to defend myself when Monica lied about me. I was just a kid, Monica protested, eyes welling up on cue. I made a mistake. A mistake you never owned up to. I cut her off. You watched me lose everything and said nothing. We did what we thought was right, Dad insisted. You refused to apologize. For something I didn't do. I felt years of anger bubbling up. I was homeless, labeled a thief, and none of you cared. Now you think you deserve to celebrate with me? That's when I decided to end it all. I pulled out my phone and showed them what I'd been holding on to all these years, security camera footage from the party, clearly showing Monica sneaking out with the stolen items. The room went dead silent. I've had this for years, I said quietly. I just didn't care enough to expose it. I'd moved on. But if you keep pushing, I'll make sure everyone sees who the real thief was. Monica went pale. Mom started crying. Dad just stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. If you try to crash the wedding, I added, security will remove you. That's not a threat, it's a promise. They left without another word, but the drama wasn't over. They tried showing up at the wedding anyway, causing a scene until security escorted them out. Later, they had the nerve to call and blame me for ruining Monica's life by exposing her lies. What about my life? I asked before hanging up. Where was this concern when she ruined mine? The wedding was beautiful despite their attempts to spoil it. My wife and I celebrated with people who truly cared about us, who'd stood by me through everything. As we left for our honeymoon, I felt lighter somehow. Free. I hear they're still angry, still telling anyone who'll listen about my betrayal. Monica apparently maintains it was all a misunderstanding. But I don't care anymore. They made their choice 6 years ago, and I've made mine. Sometimes the hardest part of standing up for yourself is accepting that the people who should have protected you might never admit they were wrong. But that's their burden to bear, not mine. I have a new family now, built on truth and trust instead of lies and manipulation. And that's worth more than any apology they could offer. After the wedding, we started receiving a barrage of messages from relatives. My aunt called one evening, her voice trembling. Your mother hasn't stopped crying for days, she said. Was it really necessary to show that video? I took a deep breath. They tried to crash my wedding. What was I supposed to do? But she's your sister. Family is family. Where was this family loyalty when I was sleeping on friends' couches? I asked, when I couldn't get a job because everyone thought I was a thief. The line went quiet for a moment. Then she sighed. I always had my doubts about Monica's story, you know? It just didn't sound like you. Then why didn't you say anything? I. I didn't want to cause problems in the family. I laughed bitterly. Well, look how that turned out. A week after the wedding, Monica showed up at my workplace. I was leaving for lunch when I saw her standing by my car, looking smaller somehow, less confident than before. Can we talk? She asked, wringing her hands. About what? I kept my distance, keys clutched tight. I'm sorry, she blurted out. I know it's too late, but I'm sorry. I was jealous. You were always the responsible one, the one everyone trusted. I wanted to take that away from you. I studied her face, searching for signs of manipulation. 6 years, Monica. 6 years of watching me suffer while you played victim. I know. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I was a coward. Every time I thought about confessing, it got harder. Then it felt impossible. Do Mom and Dad know you're here? She shook her head. They're still processing. Dad keeps saying he failed both of us. Mom barely leaves her room. They did fail us, I said. They failed to listen, to question, to be fair. But you failed me worst of all. Can we ever fix this? She asked, voice barely a whisper. I thought about all the nights I'd spent alone, about the friendships I'd lost, the years of doubt and pain. I don't know, I answered honestly. I don't hate you anymore, Monica, but I don't trust you either. And I'm not sure I want to try. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand. I just, I needed you to know I'm sorry. As I watched her walk away, I felt strangely empty. Not angry, not vindicated, just done. That evening, I told my wife about Monica's visit. We were cooking dinner together, the simple domestic piece of it a stark contrast to the chaos of my past. Do you think she meant it? She asked, chopping vegetables. Probably, I said, but it doesn't change anything. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. And your parents? I thought about Dad's red face, Mom's tears, their refusal to even consider my side all those years ago. They chose their truth, I said. They're still choosing it. I'm done trying to change their minds. Later that night, I found an old family photo while unpacking wedding gifts. Monica and me at the beach building sandcastles, both laughing. Two kids who had no idea how things would turn out. My wife found me staring at it and wrapped her arms around me. You can miss what you had, she said softly, and still know you're better off now. She was right, of course. The hardest part of growing up isn't just learning to stand up for yourself. It's accepting that sometimes the people who should have been in your corner simply weren't. And that's okay. I put the photo away and turned to my wife, my real family now. We had dinner to finish, a home to build, a future to plan. The past could stay where it belonged behind us. Some people might call it cruel, cutting off family like this. But sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for them is to stop pretending. Stop playing the roles they assigned you. Stop carrying the weight of their expectations and lies. I chose truth over family politics, self-respect over hollow reconciliation. And if that makes me the bad guy in their story, so be it. I'm too busy writing my own. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one. I was called a liar when trying to expose my brother's cheating fiancé. Now I make them pay for my evidence. 3 years ago, my life was forever changed by a betrayal so deep it left scars I'm still healing from. Standing in my childhood bedroom for the last time, packing away memories and regrets, I couldn't help but think about how it all started. When I discovered my brother, Mickey, was being cheated on by his fiancée, Nina. As if that wasn't devastating enough, my family turned their backs on me for trying to expose the truth. It was the start of a painful journey that would test my relationships, my trust in family, and my own sense of loyalty. Growing up, Mickey and I had a complicated relationship. We never really saw eye to eye. He was the golden child, always succeeding in everything he touched. Mickey never seemed to notice these comparisons, or if he did, he never acknowledged them. But that was Mickey, always trying to smooth things over without really understanding the depth of the hurt. Over time, I became used to being in his shadow, but I always tried to support him the best I could. I truly believed that family meant loyalty. But I was wrong. When Mickey met Nina 2 years before their engagement, it was at a charity gala where she was working as an event coordinator. He came home that night practically floating. Mom, Dad, you won't believe who I met tonight, he announced at Sunday dinner the next day. She's amazing, beautiful, smart, successful. Her name's Nina. I remember rolling my eyes at his enthusiasm. But even I had to admit that when we met her, she seemed perfect. Nina was tall and elegant, with a practiced charm that won everyone over immediately. She knew exactly what to say and do to impress our parents. Their first dinner at our parents' house was a masterclass in manipulation. Nina brought an expensive bottle of wine, my father's favorite brand, which she'd coincidentally discovered through a client. After dinner, she insisted on helping with the dishes despite my mother's protests. I watched from the doorway as they worked together, Nina asking all the right questions about family photos and heirlooms, making my mother feel like the most interesting person in the world. She's wonderful, isn't she? My mother gushed after Nina left. Finally, a girl worthy of your brother. So cultured, so well-mannered. And did you see how she helped with the dishes? Perfect daughter-in-law material. My father agreed, sipping the remainder of Nina's wine. Mickey's finally found someone up to our family standards. I had my reservations from the start, but I kept them to myself. Mickey was head over heels for her. And who was I to rain on his parade? But the more I saw them together, the more I noticed things that didn't add up. It started with little things. Nina would constantly be busy when Mickey needed her. Sorry, babe. I'd overhear her on the phone. Work is crazy right now. Maybe next time? But then I'd see her posts on social media, out with friends at bars and restaurants while Mickey sat home alone, making excuses for her absence to our family. Her reluctance to get involved in family gatherings was another red flag. Christmas, Thanksgiving, even Mickey's birthday, she always had a convenient excuse. My family needs me, she'd say, or I'm not feeling well today. But the moment that really set off alarm bells was when I overheard her talking to her friend at a family barbecue. They were around the corner of the house, thinking no one could hear. God, this family is so boring, Nina laughed. But Mickey's got a good job, and his family has money. A girl's got to do what a girl's got to do, right? My stomach churned, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe she was joking. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. One night, against my better judgment, I decided to follow them when they went to dinner. I told myself I was just being protective, that I needed to be sure before I said anything. I didn't expect to witness what I did. While Mickey was inside paying the bill, Nina stepped out to take a phone call. I was close enough to hear every word. Baby, I miss you too, she purred into the phone. Don't worry about Mickey. He's clueless as usual. We'll be together soon, I promise. Just stick to the plan. My heart sank. I sat in my car for nearly an hour after that, feeling physically ill. The proof I'd been dreading was now impossible to ignore. Over the next few days, I gathered more evidence, screenshots of Nina's suspicious social media activity, dates and times of her mysterious disappearances, and recordings of conversations with her friends where she laughed about Mickey's naivety. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time my phone rang, I hoped it was Mickey finally, seeing through her facade. But it was always Nina, calling to rope me into another one of her lies. Hey, could you cover for me tonight? She asked one evening. Tell Mickey I was helping you with some computer problems if he asks. I have this work thing. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her I knew everything. Instead, I just said, sorry, I'm busy tonight, and hung up. The final straw came when I saw Nina at a restaurant across town. Definitely not at work, practically sitting in another man's lap. They were kissing between courses, totally obvious about their relationship. I took photos, my hands shaking with anger and grief for my brother. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I invited Mickey over to my apartment, spending hours preparing what I would say. I cleaned obsessively, made his favorite dinner, and even bought his preferred beer. Maybe if everything else was perfect, the blow wouldn't be so hard. As I waited for him to arrive, my hands shaking as I prepared to shatter his world, I tried to rehearse my speech one more time in the mirror. Mickey, I love you. And because I love you, I have to tell you something that's going to hurt. Mickey, we need to talk about Nina. I started carefully. What about her? His face was open, trusting. She's not who you think she is. I heard her on the phone with someone else. She's cheating on you. The change in his expression was immediate. His face hardened, eyes narrowing with anger. You're lying, he spat. You're just jealous. You've always been jealous of everything I have. Mickey, please, I pleaded, pulling out my phone to show him the evidence I'd gathered. Just look at these messages, listen to what I heard. No, he shouted, knocking my phone away. I don't want to hear your lies. You're just trying to ruin my happiness because you can't stand to see me successful. The following weeks were a nightmare. Mickey not only refused to speak to me, but actively turned our family against me. Our mother was the first to confront me. How dare you try to ruin your brother's relationship? She raged during an impromptu visit to my apartment. Haven't you always been jealous enough of him? Now you want to destroy his chance at happiness too. Mom, I'm trying to protect him. I protested. Nina's gonna hurt him. The only one hurting him is you, she snapped. If you can't support your brother's marriage, Maybe you shouldn't be part of this family at all. My father wasn't any better. His disappointment was quieter, but no less painful. You need to apologize to your brother, he said during a phone call. This isn't your business. Mickey is an adult, and he can make his own decisions. But Dad, I have proof. I don't want to hear it. Fix this, or don't bother coming to the wedding. The wedding. They actually went through with it, and as promised, I wasn't invited. I spent that day alone in my apartment, watching as my social media feeds filled with pictures of their perfect day. The photos were like a carefully curated museum of happiness. Mickey beaming in his custom tuxedo, Nina radiant in a designer white dress that probably cost more than my car. Our parents looked proud and happy, Mom dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, Dad giving his signature thumbs up to the camera. The perfect family photo, minus one sister who tried to tell the truth. My cousin called me that evening, the only family member who still spoke to me. It was all for show, she said quietly. Nina was late to the ceremony, and there was drama about her phone going off during the vows. Some guy kept calling her. Let me guess, everyone ignored it. Your mom said it was work-related and changed the subject. But I saw Nina's face when the phone rang. She looked scared, not annoyed. I later learned that Nina had actually disappeared for almost an hour during the reception. My mother covered for her, telling guests she wasn't feeling well. Meanwhile, Mickey sat at the head table alone, making excuses for his new wife's absence. The look on his face, Amanda told me. He knew something was wrong, but he kept smiling for the cameras. It was heartbreaking. Then, 3 years later, my phone rang with a number I'd almost forgotten. Hey bro, Mickey's voice was small, broken. I need your help. When we met at a coffee shop the next day, he looked nothing like the confident brother I remembered. His eyes were shadowed, his shoulders slumped. Nina's been stealing money, he confessed, staring into his untouched coffee. She's pregnant, but the baby isn't mine. She's been planning this whole thing from the start, and now she's trying to take everything. The irony was almost too much to bear. I sat there, listening as he detailed everything, the affairs, the hidden bank accounts, the elaborate scheme she'd been running since before their wedding. I need you to testify, he finally said. I need your help to prove she was unfaithful from the beginning. Please. I know I don't deserve it, but I need my sister. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with messages from our parents. Your brother needs you now. It's time to be a family again. Family helps family. You need to do this for Mickey. Then came the accusations that I had somehow helped Nina cheat, that I had orchestrated this whole thing. The same people who had kicked me out of the family were now demanding my help, trying to gaslight me into thinking I was somehow responsible for the very thing I'd tried to prevent. I looked at Mickey across the table, saw the desperation in his eyes, and made my decision. I'll help you, I said slowly, but it's going to cost you. His eyes widened. Cost me? What do you mean? My evidence, my testimony, they come with a price tag. You all threw me away when I tried to warn you. Now you can pay for the truth you didn't want to hear. They paid, every last cent. And with that money, I started a new life in another state, far from the toxic family dynamics that had shaped my existence for so long. Months later, my cousin called with an update. The divorce is final, she said. Your evidence was crucial. Mickey won't have to pay child support. Nina's gone, moved in with the baby's real father. Good for them, I replied, looking out at the sunset from my new balcony. I hope they're all very happy together. Sometimes I think about reaching out, about trying to rebuild those broken bridges. But then I remember the years of pain, of being the family scapegoat, of having my warnings ignored and my character assassinated. I realize that sometimes the price of peace is distance, and the cost of self-respect is letting go. My relationship with Mickey and my parents may never be the same, but I've finally learned to put myself first. Sometimes the truest form of family loyalty is being loyal to yourself. As I settled into my new life, I received one final text from Mickey. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. You were right all along. I read it but didn't respond. Some truths come too late. and some apologies can't bridge the chasms they created. Instead, I focused on building my new life, one where I didn't have to live in anyone's shadow or apologize for speaking the truth. The betrayal that started it all may have left scars, but it also gave me something invaluable: the strength to walk away and the wisdom to know when some bridges are better left burned. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them, so please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one. I came home early and heard my girlfriend laughing about her affair, so I left without saying a word. I'm 27, male, and I've been with my girlfriend, well, ex-girlfriend now, for almost 3 years. We live together in a small apartment downtown. I worked long hours as a software developer for a startup. You know how it goes: late nights, constant pressure, but it paid well enough to keep us comfortable. My girlfriend, Kay, worked part-time as a waitress while finishing her degree, and things seemed fine. I had no reason to question our relationship. We had arguments like any couple, but nothing out of the ordinary. At least, that's what I thought, until last Tuesday. I got off work earlier than usual that day. My boss had a meeting canceled, and I figured I could surprise Kay with her favorite takeout and maybe even go for a movie afterward. It was one of those rare nights where we both had some time to relax. It had been a rough couple of months. She was stressed with her final exams, and I was buried in work. I just wanted to remind her that we were in this together, no matter how hard things got. I parked outside our building, takeout bags in hand, and felt good for the first time in a while. But as I climbed the stairs, I noticed something strange. The door to our apartment was slightly ajar. My heart did that weird thing where it skips a beat, then thuds in your chest like it's trying to escape. I stepped in, quietly. I could hear voices. Hers, obviously. But there was someone else. A guy, for sure. At first, I thought maybe one of her friends had come over. It didn't really make sense, but I didn't jump to conclusions. At least, not yet. I walked in further, through the short hallway that leads to the living room, and then I heard it. "Yeah, he has no idea," she was saying, her voice clear and sharp in the otherwise silent apartment. I froze. I mean, he works all the time. It's not like he notices when I'm out with you. Plus, I've got him wrapped around my finger, so even if he did, I could talk my way out of it. I blinked, unsure if my brain was playing tricks on me. Maybe I misunderstood. But no, the guy laughed, and I heard the unmistakable sound of a bottle clinking against a glass. They were drinking. In our living room. "He's so clueless," she continued. "It's almost sad how easy it's been. And the best part? He still thinks I'm stressed about school, and that's why I'm distant. It's pathetic." I felt my throat tighten, my hand gripping the takeout bag until my knuckles went white. My heart was pounding so hard. I thought they might hear it from the other room. I wanted to storm in there, confront her, scream, something, anything, but I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. "Well," the guy said, his voice dripping with arrogance, "as long as it works out for us, who cares, right? It's not like you're ever going to get caught." That was it. That was the moment. I felt the world split beneath me, like someone had pulled the floor out from under my feet. I didn't know who this guy was. Maybe one of the guys from her classes. Maybe someone she worked with. It didn't matter. What mattered was that she'd been cheating on me for God knows how long. And she was sitting there, laughing about it, like it was some kind of joke. I thought about barging in, screaming at her, throwing them both out, demanding answers. But then something stopped me. Maybe it was the fact that they didn't even know I was there. Or maybe it was the realization that whatever confrontation I had wouldn't change the fact that the person I loved, trusted, was a complete stranger to me now. So I left. I turned around, quietly backed out of the apartment, and closed the door as gently as I could. I couldn't risk them hearing me. I don't know why. I walked back down the stairs, got in my car, and drove off. My hands were shaking, my vision was blurry, and I felt like I was suffocating. But I kept driving. I didn't go home that night. Hell, I didn't know where home was anymore. I ended up at a friend's place. Someone Kay didn't know about. so she couldn't track me down easily. I just crashed on his couch without saying much, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts spiraling into this dark abyss. The next morning, I blocked her. Everywhere. On my phone, social media, email, anything you could think of. I didn't even tell her why. I wanted her to feel what I felt for that split second when I heard her voice, laughing about me like I was some idiot who didn't know any better. I wanted her to realize that I was gone, that she couldn't explain it away, that she couldn't manipulate her way out of it. The first few days were chaos. She tried calling a million times, texting me, emailing me, sending messages through mutual friends, even showing up at my office. My phone would buzz constantly from all the unknown numbers she tried to reach me through. Every message started the same: confusion, then apologies, and eventually desperation. Why? One message started: "Please, let's talk. I can explain everything. It's not what you think. I love you." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because how do you respond to someone who can betray you so easily, then try to twist the narrative as if you've somehow misunderstood the very clear betrayal you overheard? I wasn't misunderstanding anything. It was crystal clear. She wasn't just cheating on me physically. She was humiliating me behind my back. She had no respect for me as a person, as her partner. More time passed. I kept getting messages through our mutual friends, asking where I was, telling me that Kay was freaking out, crying, desperate to talk. They didn't know the full story, of course. I hadn't told anyone what I'd heard that night. Why would I? It was humiliating enough that it had happened. I didn't need to share it with the world. Then, about a week later, something else happened. I found out who the guy was. He wasn't a friend from school or work. He was one of my coworkers. That's right. The guy sitting there in my living room, laughing about how clueless I was, worked in the same office as me. I don't know how I didn't see it before. Maybe I'd seen him around Kay a few times, and I'd just brushed it off because I trusted her. But now it all made sense. The way she always asked about him, mentioned him in passing like he was just part of some harmless story from my work life. She'd even suggested we invite him out for drinks once, but I never thought much of it. And then, to top it all off, I found out that he had a girlfriend. So not only was Kay cheating on me, but this guy was cheating on his girlfriend too. It was like some twisted game to them. And here I was, sitting on the sidelines being played like a fool. I thought about confronting him at work, but I realized something. He wasn't worth it. She wasn't worth it. I was done with both of them, and dragging it all out into some big, dramatic showdown wouldn't make me feel better. It wouldn't change what had happened, and it wouldn't fix the betrayal. A few days later, Kay showed up at my friend's place. She must have figured out where I was staying for mutual connections. She was pounding on the door, crying, begging for me to open up. My friend asked me what I wanted to do. I told him to let her in. When she walked in, she looked like a mess, mascara running, eyes red and swollen, her hands shaking like she was scared. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not in the slightest. She started with the usual: apologies, promises that it was all a mistake, that she was confused, that the other guy didn't mean anything, that it was just a moment of weakness. But the more she talked, the more I realized she was still manipulating me, still trying to control the narrative. She didn't even fully admit to the affair at first, instead saying things like, "It wasn't like that, and I never meant to hurt you." Finally, I cut her off. "I heard everything," I said, my voice eerily calm, even though my insides were boiling. "I was there that night. You didn't know, but I was there, listening to you laugh about me." Her face turned pale, and she stopped talking. For a second, I thought she might faint. She knew. She knew there was no way out of this now. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. "We're done," I said. "There's nothing left to say." She tried to protest, tried to rush toward me, but my friend stepped between us. She broke down in tears right there in the hallway, begging, sobbing, swearing that she'd never do it again, that she loved me. But I was done. I had nothing left to give her. I left her crying in that hallway and walked out of her life without looking back. The funny thing is, as devastating as it was in the moment, There was this strange sense of relief washing over me as I walked out that door. Like I'd finally ripped off this massive band-aid that had been festering underneath. Sure, there was pain. Raw, intense, soul-crushing pain. But the weight of all that deceit and humiliation was gone. I wasn't being played anymore. I was done being the fool. After that day, she stopped trying. The calls, the texts, they all dried up. I think she finally realized there was no getting me back. Maybe she moved on to someone else. Maybe she spiraled into guilt and shame. I don't know. I don't care. What mattered was that I was free from her lies. But the guy, the one from my work, that was a different story. See, I thought about leaving the job altogether. But why should I? Why should I uproot my life because of their selfish decisions? I wasn't going to let them ruin everything. I was good at what I did, and I had a future at this company. So, I decided to stay. But that didn't mean I was going to let him get away with it. The next week, I walked into the office like normal, head held high, acting as if nothing had changed. But it was impossible not to notice the tension. He avoided me like the plague. Whenever we crossed paths in the hallway or in meetings, he'd look anywhere but at me, like he was expecting me to blow up at him any second. I didn't give him the satisfaction. I went to HR instead, quietly, calmly, and with every piece of evidence I needed to make sure they knew what kind of person they had on their payroll. It wasn't just about me. It was about the other people in the office. His girlfriend, who also worked in the building, by the way. Turns out, office affairs weren't exactly on the company's list of acceptable behavior, especially when it involved lying and manipulating people you worked with. The fallout was brutal. His girlfriend found out before HR even had time to deal with him. News spreads fast when people whisper behind closed doors. By the end of that week, he was gone. Fired. Reputation trashed. And me? I kept my head down, focused on my work, and made damn sure no one thought I was the type to be messed with again. I didn't feel like a hero, though. There was no sense of victory in any of this. Just a kind of cold satisfaction, knowing that I had removed the toxic parts of my life. What surprised me most, though, was how little time it took to move on. I thought I'd be haunted by Kay's betrayal for months, maybe even years. But after a few weeks, the fog lifted. I didn't feel like the guy who had been cheated on. I felt lighter, I guess. Like I'd learned something important about myself, about how much I was willing to tolerate from someone who was supposed to love me. I realized that, for a long time, I'd been putting Kay on a pedestal. I thought she was this perfect partner, and I'd ignored all the red flags. The nights she'd come home late with half-baked excuses. The times she'd pull away when I tried to get close. I'd ignored it all because I didn't want to face the truth, that our relationship had been broken for a long time, and I'd been too blind to see it. I won't say I've completely forgiven her or the guy. Maybe I never will. But I've learned to let it go, to focus on the things I can control, like my own happiness. And yeah, trust is harder now. It'll probably take a long time before I can fully trust someone again. But that's okay. I'll get there. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that people can be incredibly selfish, but they can also be resilient. I'm not the same person I was before I overheard that conversation. I'm tougher now, smarter, and I know what I'm worth. I won't let anyone treat me like that again. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one. Caught my girlfriend flirting with someone after she forgot to hang up. So, I dumped her on the spot. I'm 27. I was on my lunch break at work when I decided to call my girlfriend, Mia. We've been dating for about 2 years, living in a small apartment downtown. She usually texted me throughout the day, so it felt odd that she'd gone quiet. I dialed her number, half expecting her to pick up breathlessly, complaining about a hectic schedule. Instead, Mia answered in a hushed voice, "Hey, I'm busy. Can I call you later?" Then she hung up, or so I assumed. Except she didn't. A couple seconds later, I heard muffled sounds, then her voice again. Only she wasn't talking to me. She must have set her phone on the table without ending the call. I froze, listening confused. The The background noise sounded like dishes clinking, faint chatter, almost like a restaurant. Then her tone changed, downright flirtatious. My name never came up. Instead, she was addressing someone else with words like sweetheart, giggling about how he's so clueless. My blood chilled. I was stunned motionless, phone pressed to my ear in disbelief. She was telling this person they looked great tonight, joking about how they needed to do this more often. My heart hammered. This wasn't just casual banter. It was intimate, the kind of talk reserved for someone you're romantically or physically involved with. I felt a swirl of confusion and anger. Mia was on a date, right now while forgetting to enter call with me. I quickly hit the record button on my phone's second device, a habit from years back when I sometimes recorded phone meetings. My shaky fingers fumbled, but I managed to capture her conversation. She teased him about ordering dessert, teased him about how I, her dense boyfriend, never suspected anything. That final bar was a knife to the gut. The smug way she said it revealed how long this had been going on behind my back. Then I caught a snippet. This new bistro is amazing. Thanks for taking me here. Bingo! The new bistro around the corner from our place was fairly upscale. I had never taken her there. Mia had told me it was too pricey to bother. Now she was there with him. My shock ignited into fury. If she wanted to keep secrets, she should have ended the call. Slamming my laptop shut, I rushed out of my office. Coworkers gave me curious glances, but I didn't stop. My mind roared with betrayal and adrenaline. I drove with trembling hands straight to the bistro, ignoring the possibility that this could end in public humiliation. If she was brazen enough to cheat on me in broad daylight, so be it. Arriving at the restaurant, I spotted her car in the lot. My pulse quickened. I clutched my phone, still recording. My thoughts spun. Should I barge in or observe first? But there wasn't time for subtlety. I marched inside, scanning the chic interior for that all-too-familiar face. My heart hammered, and then I saw her, seated at a corner table, leaning in close to a guy with a designer shirt and an arrogant grin. Mia, laughing like this was the time of her life. My feet carried me straight to their table before I even decided what to say. She was mid-laugh when she finally noticed me looming over them. Her eyes went huge, color draining from her cheeks. Her date glanced up, confused. I had no illusions about how insane I must have appeared. Eyes blazing, fists clenched by my sides. For a second, we just stared at each other. Then I broke the silence, voice low and trembling with anger. Enjoying the date, she stammered. What are you doing here? Her date tried to muster some bravado. Dude, calm down. This is a private conversation. That lit my fury. Private? Are you kidding me? I glared at Mia. You forgot to hang up the phone. You know, I heard everything. Her face contorted with shock, then shame, then a flicker of defiance. This isn't what it looks like, she said lamely. I barked a bitter laugh. Oh, so you weren't just calling me clueless while you planned your next hookup with him? The restaurant's surrounding tables quieted, guests sensing the drama. Her date stiffened, presumably worried I'd cause a scene. A manager hovered near the bar, uncertain whether to intervene. She tried damage control. It's not that. We're just friends. It was a joke. Pathetic. I whipped out my phone, pressing play on the brief snippet I'd recorded. Her flirtatious words spilled out. He's so clueless, but it's fine. This place is so romantic, I can't wait to do more than just dinner. The color drained from her face again. She realized I had undeniable evidence. Her date, that arrogant grin wiped clean, quickly shoved back his chair. I didn't know she had a boyfriend, he muttered, sounding uneasy. Probably lies, but I didn't care. I don't want trouble, he added, backing away from the table. He left her there, effectively ditching her in the middle of this meltdown. Now alone, she looked around, humiliated. She hissed, "Can we not do this in front of everyone?" I snorted. Maybe you should have thought about that before planning your cheating spree in public. She tried to reach for my arm, tears springing to her eyes. I messed up, okay? I was lonely. You've been so busy. I yanked away, voice dropping low. Lonely? So you jump into a date with him? Spare me the excuses. People nearby pretended not to listen, but they clearly caught every heated word. Mia swallowed hard, tears now streaming. She tried to cling to my shirt. Let's just go home, talk about it. My rage boiled. We have no home. You made sure of that the moment you started flirting with someone else. She whimpered, please, I love you. No, you love the idea of me being too naive to notice. But guess what I noticed? I stepped back, raising my phone slightly. I'm done. We're done. She tried to salvage it. It was a mistake I never intended. I cut her off. Don't lie, you planned this date. You called me clueless. That's more than a mistake. That's betrayal. Her tears streaked her cheeks as I turned to leave, heart pounding, adrenaline coursing. Wait, don't go, she yelled after me, but I was already heading for the door, ignoring the stunned onlookers. The drive back to our shared apartment felt surreal. I realized she had a key, had clothes in my closet, personal items scattered across our place. The thought of facing her again, under the same roof, turned my stomach. She tried calling me multiple times, but I let it ring. Eventually, I parked outside and remained inside the car for an hour. I needed some time alone, mustering the will to enter. Part of me hoped she'd be gone, but of course, she was there, perched on the couch, tears streaked. She stood the moment I walked in. Please let me explain, she whispered. Don't you want to at least hear why I did it? My voice came out hollow. A reason? You cheated. You lied. You ridiculed me. She wrung her hands. I was feeling neglected. You've been working late. You hardly take me out. I craved excitement. My jaw set. So you talked to me about it like an adult. Instead, you found your excitement in someone else's arms. Someone you boasted about right in my ear. She wept, insisted she was confused, that it was only a fling. It didn't mean anything, she claimed. I laughed bitterly, reminded her of how she'd belittle me on that call. If that's how you act for meaningless things, I'd hate to see you with actual feelings. She whimpered. I never wanted to hurt you. I snapped. But you did. This is over. I can't trust you again. Her eyes flared with desperation. We can fix this. I'll block him. I'll do anything. I shook my head. No, we're done. I grabbed a duffel bag, started tossing the inessentials, my personal documents, electronics, anything I didn't want her rummaging through. She trailed after me, sobbing. Don't leave. This is your place too. I paused, turning on her. You might as well keep it for tonight, but I'll be gone. By the weekend, I expect you out permanently. She squeaked in indignation. Why me? You can't just throw me out on the street. I fixed her with a hard stare. I can and I will. We're not married. The lease is in my name. I'm not obligated to keep a cheater under my roof. She changed tactics, anger surfacing. You'll regret this. I'll tell people you were controlling, that you're the reason I stepped out. I shrugged. Go ahead. I have recorded proof of your cheating, remember? Let's see who regrets what. Her eyes flicked with fear, aware I had the audio from her phone fiasco. Storming past her, I loaded my bag into my car. If you have any sense, you'll be gone by tomorrow. Otherwise, I might get a restraining order. She shot me a furious look, but tears returned. She sat down, face in her hands. I forced myself to walk away, ignoring the pang in my chest. Despite my anger, we had built memories together. But those memories were overshadowed by betrayal. That night, I slept in a friend's spare bedroom, unsettled and raw, but certain I'd done the right thing. The next morning, I started taking steps. Changed my phone passwords. Canceled her secondary card on my bank account. Enough was enough. She had no place in my life now, not after using me as a fallback while dating someone else. But little did I know, she wasn't done with her manipulative attempts. Over the next few days, my phone lit up with messages from Mia. She oscillated between begging and lashing out. Please come back. I'll fix everything. In one text. Then, you're a heartless jerk in the next. I blocked her on social media, but she found ways to contact me via new accounts. She tried guilt-tripping me, claiming she had nowhere to go, that her family lived too far, that I was punishing her for a small mistake. Each message fueled my resolve to stay away. One evening, Mia showed up at my workplace, waiting by the parking lot. The moment I stepped out, she rushed over, tears in her eyes. "We need to talk." My co-workers glanced over, sensing drama. I kept my voice low. "There's nothing to discuss. You cheated. It's over." She attempted a big public meltdown, sobbing that I was throwing away our future over one slip-up. I refused to budge. I told her, "I have the recording. This wasn't a random slip. It was premeditated. You called me clueless, remember?" She cringed, probably recalling how humiliating it was that I overheard. She threatened to scream I'd hit her. But I realized people were watching. Another manipulative play. I stepped back, hands raised. "Try it. People can see I'm not touching you." She fumed, eventually stomping off. Days turned into a week. She finally cleared out of my apartment, leaving a note on the table. "I hope you realize how much you hurt me by not giving me another chance." My laugh was humorless. She hurt me, yet twisted it so I was to blame for not forgiving her swiftly. Classic entitlement. Mia made one final gambit, contacting some mutual friends, spinning a tale of me being distant, that she slipped up because she felt unloved. She asked them to mediate, to push me to talk things out. But these friends knew me well. Once they heard the recorded snippet or simply recognized the level of deception, they took my side or stayed neutral. She'd lost the moral high ground. At last, the storm calmed. Mia retreated from my life, presumably scouring for a new place or new victim. My heartbreak gradually gave way to relief. I dodged a bullet. Someone who could betray me so easily wasn't worth the tears. In a twisted sense, I found closure in her phone error. Without it, I might never have known. She would have continued that affair behind my back. Her carelessness saved me from more heartbreak down the line. Today, I stand alone in my reclaimed apartment. Bedding changed, new locks on the door, slowly healing. I keep minimal reminders of her. Friends ask how I'm doing. I say, better than ever, and I mean it. She might sulk around telling her sob story, but the truth is clear. She broke my trust, and there's no going back. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them, so please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.
Mill tried to steal my house using a fake lawyer. She had no idea I'm a real one until it was too late. I'm 35, male. As a lawyer with over a decade of experience, I've learned that sometimes the best advantage is letting people underestimate you. I rarely mention my profession, unless I have to, which has saved me more than once, especially when dealing with my mother-in-law, Karen. From day one, Karen and I were like oil and water. Picture this: a woman who'd spent decades being the sun her daughter's world revolved around, suddenly faced with some middle-class guy stealing her spotlight. She'd sit there at family gatherings, sweet as artificial sweetener, taking these perfectly timed jabs at my background or career. "Oh, honey, you work in an office? That's nice." All said with this smile that just dared you to call her out. When I proposed to her daughter, Karen went into overdrive. Suddenly every conversation included a mention of that nice doctor her daughter dated in college. He's chief of surgery now, you know. The fact that she had no clue I was actually a successful attorney just made her little digs that much more entertaining. Everything really hit the fan when we bought our house 3 years ago. It's this beautiful colonial place, a peaceful neighborhood, about an hour from Karen's house. You'd think we'd announced we were moving to Mars, an hour away, but how will I help the grandchildren? Never mind that we didn't even have kids yet. She started showing up unannounced, always with some paper-thin excuse about being in the neighborhood. Yeah, 60 miles from home then, about 6 months ago, Karen started getting weird about the house. It started with these odd comments dropped into conversation, stuff about family property and keeping things in the right hands. At first, we just rolled our eyes. But then she got more aggressive, questioning whether we were mature enough to handle home ownership. Everything came to a head one afternoon when she showed up with this guy who looked like he'd bought his suit from a Halloween store. She waltzed in like she owned the place, which, as it turned out, was exactly what she was aiming for. "We need to discuss some paperwork," she announced, settling in at our dining room table like she was closing on a Fortune 500 merger. "It's about transferring the house into my name. For the family's security, of course." I had to bite my cheek to keep from laughing. Her lawyer, Mr. Clark, started pulling wrinkled papers from a briefcase that had seen better days. Everything about him screamed fake, from his nervous sweating to the way he couldn't make eye contact. I decided to have some fun. Asked him some basic legal questions any first-year law student could answer. Watched him squirm and stumble while Karen kept trying to cut in. "Let's just sign the papers and worry about the details later." Finally, I'd had enough of the charade. Reached for my own briefcase. "As a practicing attorney myself," I said casually, "I have some concerns about these documents." The looks on their faces, priceless. Karen's jaw literally dropped. "You're a lawyer?" 10 years and counting," I smiled. "Now, want to explain why you're trying to fraudulently transfer my property with falsified documents and an impersonated legal representative?" The documents were a joke. Wrong terminology, missing clauses, spelling errors everywhere. But I had more. "I've got records of all your unauthorized property inquiries, Karen." "Oh, and those emails you sent from your work account about forging documents?" Not very subtle. That's when she switched tactics, turned to my wife with crocodile tears. "Sweetie, your husband is being unreasonable. This is about family." My wife, who'd been quiet until then, finally spoke up. "No, Mom, this is about control, and it stops now." I laid out exactly how much trouble they were in, and Mr. Clark practically sprinted for the door. Karen tried to bluff and bluster, but I shut it down. "I've already contacted the authorities. The title inquiries alone could mean criminal charges. But I'm willing to keep this quiet if you drop it and stay out of our lives." The aftermath was something else. I filed a complaint against Mr. Clark with the Bar Association. Turns out he was her tennis instructor's brother-in-law who'd taken a few law classes before dropping out. He quickly disappeared from the picture, likely to avoid further legal trouble. I also worked with a title protection service to ensure Karen couldn't make any future claims on our house. Karen unsurprisingly tried to retaliate. She spread rumors among family members, claiming I was destroying the family and turning my wife against her. Most of them saw through her lies, but a few called to ask what was going on. I calmly explained the situation, and once they heard the full story, they were firmly on our side. The most satisfying moment came a month later, when I received a letter from Karen's workplace. Karen lost her job when they found out she'd been using company resources for her scheme. Many of them, especially those who had already been burned by her manipulative ways, began distancing themselves. She went from being the self-proclaimed matriarch to a pariah almost overnight. Still, she didn't go quietly. She tried one last desperate move, filing a bogus lawsuit claiming she had contributed financially to our house and therefore had a stake in it. The irony of her baseless claim wasn't lost on me. When the court date arrived, Karen struts in wearing what I can only describe as her power suit, accompanied by a lawyer who, while slightly more polished than Mr. Clark, still gave off distinct ambulance chaser vibes. She had this smug look on her face like she thought she was about to star in her own episode of Law and Order. I chose to represent myself. My regular lawyer offered to handle it, but after looking at Karen's lawsuit, he just laughed and asked, "Want to take this one yourself? It might be fun." He wasn't wrong. The judge was this no-nonsense woman in her 60s who looked like she'd seen every trick in the book. The moment Karen's team started their opening statement, I could see the judge's expression shift from professional neutrality to barely concealed irritation. Karen's lawyer tried to spin this elaborate tale about how she'd been intimately involved in our home purchase. According to him, she had made substantial contributions to the down payment and had an unofficial agreement about partial ownership. He threw around a lot of legal jargon, clearly trying to compensate for the lack of actual evidence. When it was my turn to cross-examine Karen, That's when things got really interesting. Mrs. Karen, I started, keeping my tone perfectly professional. Could you please specify the exact amounts you contributed to the house purchase? She shifted in her seat. Well, it was several substantial amounts over time. Could you provide the specific dates and amounts? I didn't keep records. These were family arrangements. I see. And how were these contributions made? Check? Wire transfer? Cash? It was more of an understanding between family members. An understanding, I repeated, letting that hang in the air. So, you're asking the court to believe you contributed to a six-figure property purchase without keeping a single receipt, bank statement, or written agreement. The judge was actually taking notes at this point, none of them favorable to Karen's case. I then pulled out my evidence, complete documentation of our home purchase, including all sources of funds, bank statements showing every penny came from our accounts, the unauthorized title inquiries Karen had made, the fraudulent documents from her previous attempt with Mr. Clark. And just for good measure, the complaint was filed with the Bar Association about her fake lawyer scheme. Your Honor, I concluded, what we have here isn't just a baseless claim. It's part of a pattern of attempted fraud and harassment, as evidenced by these documents. Karen's lawyer tried to object, but his heart wasn't in it. He knew they were sinking. The judge took off her glasses and looked directly at Karen. Mrs. Karen, in my 30 years on the bench, I've seen a lot of frivolous lawsuits. But this, she shook her head. This is exceptional in its complete lack of merit. Not only is there no evidence to support your claim, but there is substantial evidence of previous attempts to fraudulently obtain this property. The judge dismissed the case with prejudice and ordered Karen to pay all legal fees. She even recommended that Karen seek legal counsel about potential consequences for filing false claims. As we left the courthouse, Karen looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. She tried to maintain her dignity, but it's hard to look haughty when you've just been dressed down by a judge in open court. She shot me this venomous glare, but I just smiled and wished her a nice day. In the weeks that followed, Karen retreated into obscurity. Without her job or her family's support, she had no leverage left. My wife and I focused on rebuilding our lives without her interference, setting firm boundaries to ensure she couldn't weasel her way back in. The family dynamics shifted dramatically. Once everyone heard what she'd tried to pull, years of similar stories came out. Attempts to control her sister's inheritance, trying to get power of attorney over their father's estate. She'd been pulling this stuff for years, just never got caught so blatantly before. These days, we keep Karen at arm's length. My wife isn't ready to cut contact completely, but we have strict boundaries. No unannounced visits, no financial discussions, and any manipulation gets shut down immediately. Looking back, I'm actually grateful it happened. My wife finally stood up to years of manipulation, and we came out stronger. Our house isn't just a home anymore. It's a symbol of standing our ground. And here's my advice. When dealing with manipulative family members, don't back down. These people thrive on intimidation, but they crumble when faced with facts and firm boundaries. Sometimes the best defense is letting them think they've got the upper hand, right until the moment they realize they never stood a chance. My brother stole our dying mom's pain medicine to sell for money, so I had him arrested. I'm 29, and my brother David is 32. He's always been the charismatic one, the life of the party, the guy who could talk his way out of anything. Growing up, I watched him charm teachers into extending deadlines, convince our parents to extend curfew, and sweet-talk his way out of countless sticky situations. Even when money was tight, he'd find ways to maintain his flashy lifestyle, always wearing designer clothes and driving cars he couldn't afford. But I never imagined he'd stoop so low as to try to profit from our mom's death through insurance fraud. Our childhood wasn't exactly rough, but we weren't well off either. Mom worked 2 jobs to keep us comfortable after Dad left, and she taught us the value of hard work and honesty. I took those lessons to heart, but David always seemed to be looking for shortcuts. He'd rather spend 3 hours figuring out how to cheat on a test than spend 2 hours studying for it. That's just who he was. It all started about a year ago when I discovered David had been frequenting a casino an hour away from our hometown. One of my friends mentioned seeing him there, saying he looked intense, focused in a way that seemed almost scary. At first, I brushed it off. David was an adult, and if he wanted to gamble, that was his business. I thought he was just blowing off steam, maybe enjoying a night out here and there. But then, more stories started coming in. Friends would see him there multiple times a week, always at the high-stakes tables. He'd be there from opening until closing, barely taking breaks to eat or drink. The more I heard, the more worried I became. This wasn't casual gambling, this was an obsession. When I finally investigated further, the truth was much darker than I'd imagined. David hadn't just developed a gambling problem. He'd managed to rack up thousands in debt to some seriously shady characters at the casino. These weren't official casino loans either. These were the kind of debts that came with broken fingers if you didn't pay up. I suspected loan sharks, the type of people who'd shoot you in the kneecaps rather than take you to court. My suspicions led me to check our mom's accounts. She'd always kept David's name on them just in case, despite my objections. What I found made my stomach drop. Large sums of money had been withdrawn over the past few months, sometimes thousands at a time. The paper trail led straight to David. He'd been systematically draining our mother's savings to fund his addiction. I couldn't sleep for days after discovering this. Our mom, who'd worked double shifts for years to put us through school, who'd sacrificed everything for us, was being robbed blind by her own son. The betrayal was almost too much to comprehend. I confronted him late one night in the kitchen, knowing he was a midnight snacker. Sure enough, around 2 a.m. I heard him rummaging around in there. As he made himself a sandwich, I cornered him and laid out everything I knew. David froze mid-bite, dropping his knife on the counter with a clatter that seemed to echo in the silent house. Instead of denying it like I expected, he broke down completely. It was like watching a dam burst, all his carefully maintained facade crumbling in an instant. "I never meant for it to get this bad," he said, slumping into a kitchen chair with his head in his hands. "I thought I could handle it, you know? Win big once or twice, pay everything back before anyone noticed. But it just kept getting worse and worse. Now God, they're going to kill me if I don't pay them back by next month." I wanted to feel sympathy. Part of me remembered the big brother who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd stood up for me against bullies in middle school. But after what he'd done to Mom, I couldn't find any compassion left. "You need to leave," I told him, my voice cold and firm. "You can't stay here and keep stealing from her." To his credit, David didn't argue. He just nodded, packed a bag, and left. I watched him walk down the driveway in the pre-dawn light, wondering if I'd ever see him again. For a while, things were peaceful without David around. Mom seemed happier, though I knew she missed him. She'd always had a soft spot for David, even when his schemes and screw-ups caused problems. Then our world shattered. Mom was diagnosed with lung cancer, stage 4, already spread to her lymph nodes. The doctors prescribed strong opioid patches for the pain, but it was still brutal watching her suffer. Despite everything, one of her main concerns was making peace between her sons. "Please forgive your brother," she begged me during our late-night talks, squeezing my hand with what little strength she had left. "I don't want to leave this world with my boys at odds." Her words haunted me, so eventually, I reached out to David. I had no idea where he was living, but I managed to get a message to him through an old friend. When he showed up, he looked thinner, more haggard, but he was still the same old David at his core. He hugged Mom, told her how good she looked, a lie. The cancer had ravaged her, and seemed genuinely upset about her condition. But something felt off about how he kept asking about her insurance policy, probing for details about her coverage and benefits. Then Mom's pain patches started disappearing. At first, we thought she was just using them faster as her pain increased, but they were vanishing too quickly, making her suffering even worse as she ran out before her next prescription was due. I noticed David sneaking into her room at odd hours, so I set up a hidden camera. What I captured made my blood boil. David was stealing her medication. When I confronted him, he initially denied everything, trying to gaslight me just like he'd done so many times before. But under pressure he finally snapped. Fine. Yes, I'm stealing them. Every night I go in there, kiss her forehead, say goodnight, Mommy, then grab a few more patches from under her bed. Happy now? Is that what you wanted to hear? The worst part was how he'd pretend to help Mom look for the missing patches, turning her room upside down in a show of concern while knowing exactly where they were, in his pocket, ready to be sold. When I demanded to know why, his response chilled me to the bone. I'm selling them. I owe money to some really dangerous people. Mom's dying anyway, so I might as well use this to save my own life. It's what she'd want. I lost it then, screaming every horrible name I could think of, calling him a pathetic coward, a disgusting excuse for a son, a monster who didn't deserve to be called human. That's when Mom walked in, looking frail but determined to know what was happening. My heart broke as I had to tell her the truth about David stealing her medication to sell it. The look of devastation on her face is something I'll never forget. She just stood there, tears streaming down her cheeks, as David stared at the floor in shame. When she asked if it was true, all he could do was nod, unable to even look her in the eye. But even that wasn't the full extent of David's betrayal. Later that week, I overheard him on the phone in the garage. Just give me a few more days. I'll get my mom's insurance money. The pieces fell into place. He wasn't just selling her pain patches. He was actively trying to hasten her death to collect the insurance payout. The brother I'd grown up with, who I'd shared a room with for 15 years, was essentially plotting our mother's murder for money. I recorded his admission and showed Mom. She was devastated, but it gave us what we needed to press charges against him for attempted murder. The police came, and David was led away in handcuffs, still trying to explain himself, still trying to talk his way out of it like he'd done so many times before. Mom's health declined rapidly after that. The cancer spread aggressively, and even the patches couldn't keep up with her pain anymore. Through it all, she kept asking me to forgive David, but I couldn't. The anger was too raw, too deep. Every time I saw her wince in pain, every time I had to help her to the bathroom because she was too weak to walk alone, I thought about what David had done, and the rage would build again. One afternoon, Mom asked for a special day together, just the two of us. Despite her weakness, she seemed energized by the idea. We visited places from my childhood. The old ice cream shop downtown where the same lady still worked behind the counter, her hair now gray but her smile just as warm. We went to the park where I'd learned to swing, the equipment looking so much smaller now than it had in my memories. For a few precious hours, it felt like I was a kid again, sharing laughs and ice cream drips with my mom. That evening, she shared the news. Her cancer was more aggressive than they'd thought, and she didn't have much time left. Her final wish was for me to forgive David. She understood my anger but didn't want to leave this world with her sons divided. Life is too short to hold on to hate, she told me, her voice weak but certain. Promise me you'll at least try to forgive him, even if it takes years. Mom passed peacefully a week later, holding my hand as she slipped away. The loss was unbearable, like someone had ripped out a vital organ and expected me to keep living without it. At her funeral, David was released from jail to attend, wearing handcuffs and accompanied by 2 guards. When I saw him, all my bottled-up emotions exploded. I told him I never wanted to see him again, and walked away as he called after me, his voice breaking. Months passed as I tried to move on. I started seeing a therapist to work through my anger and grief. David sent letters from jail, which I read but never answered. Each one was filled with apologies, explanations, and promises to change. Eventually they stopped coming. I told myself it was better this way. Then one day, I got a call from the prison warden. David had been in a fight and was hospitalized. I sat with that information for a long time, torn between checking on him and maintaining my distance. In the end, I did nothing. The thought of seeing him, of having to face everything again, was too much. Recently, another letter arrived from David. I almost threw it away, but something made me open it. Inside was a simple message. I'm sorry. I love you. Please forgive me. I stared at those words for what felt like hours, before putting the letter in a drawer. Mom's voice echoed in my head. Life is too short to hold on to hate. Maybe it was time to consider forgiveness, not for David's sake, but for Mom's, and for my own. The road to forgiveness would be long and difficult, but maybe it was time to take the first step.
Kicked out as a teen by my twins' lies. Now my parents demand money after seeing my success. Family is supposed to be a safe haven for children, but for me, it was the storm that shattered my life. At just 14, I was abandoned by my parents, all because of my twin brother's lies. He spread false rumors that tore my world apart, leaving me to fend for myself. Years later, my parents reached out to me, not to apologize, but to demand money. Now I have a choice. Do I expose the truth and teach them a lesson or walk away for good? I'm 28 now, but my story begins when I was just a teenager. I have a twin brother, and from as early as I can remember, he was the favorite. My parents always compared us, and somehow I always fell short. While he was praised for his academics and charm, I was dismissed as the rebellious one who liked sports and making friends. My interests were seen as distractions, and my achievements were ignored. My brother, on the other hand, got everything he wanted. He was indulged, spoiled, and given every opportunity, while I was treated like an afterthought. I became the black sheep of the family, and as time passed, the gap between us grew wider. The real nightmare began on our 14th birthday. My parents threw an extravagant party for my brother, but no one showed up. Meanwhile, my friend surprised me with a day out at the arcade, and I had the time of my life. That day must have lit a fire of jealousy in my brother, because soon after, he began spreading lies about me. He told everyone I was a bully, both at home and at school. He even went as far as punching himself to fabricate evidence of my so-called abuse. At first, I thought no one would believe his ridiculous stories. But slowly, the whispers grew louder. Friends started avoiding me. Teachers gave me strange looks. Even my parents began to treat me differently. I couldn't understand why, until one of my friends told me the truth. My brother had been spinning lies, and everyone believed him. The rumors escalated, and soon, the principal called me and my brother into his office, along with our parents. I was terrified but hopeful that the truth would finally come out. Instead, my brother doubled down on his lies, crying and accusing me of being abusive. My parents didn't hesitate to take his side, adding their own accusations of my anger issues. The principal suspended me for 10 days. When we got home, the situation took an even darker turn. My dad packed my belongings, threw them into the foyer, and told me to leave. I begged them to believe me, but they had already made up their minds. If not for my grandmother, who came to pick me up and defend me, I don't know where I would have gone. My grandmother took me to her home in another state. Living with her gave me the freedom to heal, both physically and emotionally. Over time, I found my passion for writing and poured my pain into words. I graduated college with top honors, started a career as a writer, and built a name for myself. For years, I heard nothing from my parents or brother until a few days ago. My phone buzzed with 6 missed calls from my mom. When I finally called her back, she congratulated me on my success and then asked for money to bail my brother out of trouble. I thought my parents' demands were the peak of their audacity, but I was wrong. A few days later, my twin brother showed up unannounced. He came into my home, wearing his usual smug grin, and wasted no time getting to the point. He said he knew I had refused to help our parents bail him out, and that it was my last chance to comply. I didn't expect what came next. He reached into his bag and pulled out old suspension notices and fabricated injury photos from when we were teenagers. Proof of the lies he had used to destroy my life back then. He told me that if I didn't give him the money, he'd take these to the press and expose me as an abuser. I was furious, but I stayed calm. This time, I wasn't going to let him manipulate me. As he went on, gloating about how everyone would believe his evidence, I quietly hit record on my phone. I asked him why he would ruin my life again after everything he'd already done. His response sent chills down my spine. Because I can. I did it before, and I'll do it again. No one will believe you over me. That was all I needed. As he continued his threats, I calmly said, "Are you done? Because I've got everything I need to end this once and for all." Confusion flickered across his face, but when I played back the recording of his threats, the color drained from his cheeks. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. I told him I wasn't the scared teenager he once manipulated. This time, I had the upper hand, and if he didn't back off, I'd share this recording with the same press he wanted to use against me and the police. He stammered, tried to backtrack, but I wasn't interested in his excuses. I told him to leave and never contact me again, or the world would hear every word he had just said. He left in a hurry, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of justice. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was fighting back. After that confrontation, I didn't wait for him to try anything else. I sent the recording to my lawyer, who advised me to file a notice of legal action if my brother or parents tried to contact me again. The very next day, I emailed the recording to my parents and relatives, exposing the truth about my brother's lies and manipulation. The backlash was swift. My parents faced criticism from family, and my brother became a pariah. For once, the tables had turned. Some of my old friends even reached out to apologize for believing my brother's lies back then. As for me, I finally felt free. The truth wasn't just my weapon, it was my shield. With my grandmother's support, I was able to close this chapter and move forward, stronger than ever. The pain of my childhood gave me the strength to become who I am today. To anyone facing betrayal or manipulation, remember, the truth is your greatest ally. Stand up for yourself, and don't let anyone silence you. What would you have done in my shoes? Let me know in the comments, and stay tuned for more of my story.